So when it comes to adding paraprofessional support to the IEP, the bottom line is that we need to include a statement about why the student needs a paraprofessional and then the specific responsibilities of that paraprofessional, including how often they're going to work with the student, where they're working with the student, what type of support they're providing, etc. We'll get into that. I'm going to model in a second here what it looks like to actually add this to a student's IEP. Before I do though, just know the resources here. In SpEd forms, when you're writing the IEP, you'll have templates in a drop-down menu that make it easier and faster to include the documentation. This document though has exactly the same things that are available to you in SpEd forms. So in case you, before an IEP meeting, during an IEP meeting, need to refresh yourself on what templates are available, it's easier to look at them here than to, dig into SpEd forms and pull up a student's IEP. So know that these examples are always there for you to check out. But let's get into then in the IEP and SpEd forms on services page 2 is where the paraprofessional section is. So it's right at the top. You see it right here. And I could either put no if the student doesn't need paraprofessional support. I can't leave this blank. Or I can say yes. And because for this video, let's click add, and then we get a box for paraprofessional support. So type of paraprofessional support: shared, one-on-one, personal care assistant or PCA, and then job coach. Shared is the most common, and that means if I'm the paraprofessional working with this student, I can also work with other students. So I might have 2 or more special education students in the classroom I'm in, and I can work with Johnny for a minute or so. I can move over and work with Chelsea. I can work with both at the same time. I am shared. If I choose one-on-one, it means there's a reason why that paraprofessional, that adult, can only be working with that student. So they can't take their attention off of them. They can't shift and step 5 or 10 feet away and work with another special education student. They are only to be working with that one student at a time. It's truly one-on-one. So it's a big deal to say this is no longer shared. This student needs one-on-one adult support. Personal care assistant. Let's get to MA billing. A PCA, that label, relates to, there are certain services that the school can bill Minnesota's Department of Human Services for. And one of those is a PCA, hours for a PCA. So a paraprofessional can sometimes be functioning as a personal care assistant if they are supporting activities of daily living, eating, toileting, grooming, dressing, etc. Health-related tasks like student is self-administering medication, but the para is assisting with cueing them to take their medication, handling and helping with the setup of the medication, or observation, redirection, and intervention of a behavior episode. And you can imagine this is rigidly defined, what a behavior episode means and what is billable and what's not billable. So MA billing is a whole separate course you could take. I'm not going to go deep into it right now, but that is what it means when a paraprofessional is being a PCA. And then job coach is a specific role often in secondary transition programs. So students 18 to 22, for example, who are in that secondary transition program and going into the community and job sites. So for the sake of this video, let's choose shared because it's the most common. We have location, special education, general education, home, or community. So home and community, especially community, might be that job coach. Special education, gen education are going to be our most common. You might be thinking, what if the paraprofessional is going to support the student in both? You would just split this up. We're only doing one row essentially on the IEP of paraprofessional support. We would click add again and add a second one for the time that the students or the paras working in that other setting. So let's choose general education. And then this is another area where we have drop downs. You see, we don't have to write and start from scratch. So I'm going to choose, there's a generic one that doesn't include any extra stuff, but it's just In these places, they will access paraprofessional to support what the para will do, when, etc. So we would have to fill in all of that. There's other examples for PCA, MA billing. Let's choose behavior. So paraprofessional to implement BSP. So I need to individualize this, make sure it's accurate to my student, and then just complete because it's only a template. So I'm going to say well, I've already said general education up there. So in math, reading, and social studies class, during all activities, this is the student's name, will have access to paraprofessional support to facilitate implementation of the prevention, reinforcement, and response strategies included in student's behavior support plan. So if that is accurate to the student, I'm going to leave it. In this case, I am. And now I choose frequency. So I'm going to say 5 times a week. And those classes would add up to, doing math in my head, 120 minutes. And then anticipated duration of 1 year. It's going to be common when I'm writing an annual IEP. And then the start date and end date, these would be the same as the special education services, the instruction. So math instruction, reading instruction, social skills instruction. Same dates for start date and end date. It didn't want to do what I wanted it to do. Okay. And 1 year later. Okay. And if I was just writing up para support that would be during extended school year, summer, I would check this box, but I'm not doing that right now. So I'm going to move on. I'm going to click save, and let's just do this one more time. So now I'm adding a second row for something else. So I just scroll down and start again. So I'm going to say shared again. This time I'm going to say special education and statement of needs. Let's say activities of daily living. Student requires hands-on assistance when changing a pull-up throughout the day. Let's see. When grooming in the morning. Student also needs cueing and constant supervision while attempting to use the toilet. Student's personal care assistant will be maintained as a separate document. Okay, so I'm going to say frequency. And I have options there, per hour, per day, per week. But 5 times a week is what I'm going with. And I'm going to say that this takes 30 minutes. Anticipated duration. Okay. Save again. All right, and that's what it looks like to document this in the IEP on that services page. Just jumping back to talk about considering adding this in the first place. So we've talked about, adding it, documenting it in the IEP, but when should we be doing that? Just keep in mind, it's a highly restrictive support. So when we're thinking about student independence, which is our ultimate goal, maximizing their growth and their independence, things like assistive technology, accommodations and modifications, so changing the tasks that the student is doing, are less restrictive than having an extra adult in the room to support and cue and work with that student. So if there's any way that we can have that student function successfully in that environment with those tasks, with assistive technology or accommodations and modifications or another supplemental aid or support, besides having that extra adult, we want to do that. We want to minimize this paraprofessional support. And there are a couple of reasons why. Research indicates that students with paraprofessional support are they receive less attention from their certified licensed teachers, the content experts in the room, because a number of reasons that could be. The certified teacher sees that other adult and knows that that other adult, the paraprofessional, can work with and support the student. So the teacher can work with the other students in the room, and that leads to the student with a paraprofessional getting less attention from that teacher. Those students are, again, research overall, broadly, more socially isolated, less self-determined or motivated. They're more likely to be looking to that adult to tell them what to do, and not as much of a self-starter, and are more dependent on adults, more looking to the adults to help and do for them versus trying things themselves and making mistakes. When is paraprofessional support needed then? It's when the student, with accommodations, modifications, or AT, with those things, the student wouldn't be able to access a setting even with those things. So, for example, a student might be, for their math instruction, in a separate math classroom, special education classroom for math. But if they have a paraprofessional to help them with modified assignments in a gen ed math classroom. So we decide, oh, this student could be in the gen ed math classroom with their typically developing peers, but they need to be working on significantly modified, different worksheets, different assignments than what the rest of the class is doing. That's the way that this student is going to be successful in that gen ed math classroom. We can only make that happen if a paraprofessional is there to support the student, because they're working on very different materials and activities, even though they're in the gen ed classroom with their peers. If that's the decision that the team is making, and we can get the students to be successful in that less restrictive setting and be in that gen ed classroom, but only with the paraprofessional support, that's a perfect scenario where the paraprofessional support is warranted, because it's going to increase access to the general education curriculum by having that paraprofessional there. Even in those cases, though, we need to have a plan. And when we say plan, it's not necessarily, we're not talking about a specific written document, but a plan that the IEP team discusses. It could be written in the agenda of the IEP meeting, for example, about how we're going to fade that paraprofessional support. So before we even add it, we need to be thinking about how we're going to fade it away and increase that student's independence.